Welcome to True Crime and Wine. I am Sherrilyn Dale, and I am so glad you found me. If you have never commented before, or if you're new, please say hi in the comments. I love chatting with you, and I'd love to say hi back and send you appreciation for being here. I'm sorry to all of my regular Sippendales who were expecting a riddle last week, and I didn't realize until the very end of the video that I didn't have one to give you an answer to, so I have one for you this week. This one I actually was able to figure out, but it's going to take you like a minute, so that's okay, but I know you can do it. All right, today's riddle is: A is the brother of B. B is the brother of C. C is the father of D. How is D related to A? I know you can do it, all right? I know you can. While you're trying to figure it out, I have a quick message for you. I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor today, Beam. Now, bear with me because I'm going to need a couple minutes here to just sing their praises and thank them for not only making this video possible, but for giving Big Eye and I some of the best sleeps we have had in ages with their dream powder. If you've never heard of it before, let me tell you. Basically, it's 1 to 2 scoops of just like nightly cocoa heaven bliss, okay? All we do is we heat up some water. We add 1 to 2 scoops. Sometimes I'm feeling like 1. Sometimes I'm feeling a little sweeter with 2. You mix it up with the adorable little frother that you get if you're a subscriber. You do this about 30 to 40 minutes before bedtime, and then you sleep like, I want to say a baby because I feel like that's the phrase, but if you have babies, you know babies don't sleep. So I want to say it's like you sleep like parents who book a hotel stay for 2 nights just to sleep for 48 hours because it's uninterrupted, like that good. First impression was the taste. It's the first thing we did when we made the drink. And we were both so blown away. I don't know what I was expecting. For some reason I thought like, okay, if you're taking something to sleep, it's going to be bitter for whatever reason, but it was divine. Then there was our sleep. I don't know about you, but it takes me forever to fall asleep. Brent is complete opposite. Since I've been taking Dream though before bed, I use the time to just watch a show, which also like disturbs Brent. I haven't been needing to do that. I'll start to put one on and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're going to finish, the next half an hour of this later. I've only gotten 5 minutes in. Like, I fall asleep so effortlessly, and I've been staying asleep, and I've been waking up at 6:30 with so much energy. I know for a lot of people who get up early, they're like, 6:30, Sherrilyn, like that's the standard. Not for me. But the first morning I was like, what's going on? Then when Brent and I spoke later, he told me he was going to go to the mall at lunch to get some new running shoes because he couldn't find his. And he woke up that morning wanting to go for a run because he had all this energy. And I was like, it's the Beam Dream. Now I want to go just briefly through the ingredients because if you know me, you know I'm already like really embarrassed that I'm going to butcher these names, but I think it's important just to like loosely touch on. So because I'm like, how is this mix possible? What does it do? How does it do it? And it does it through apigenin, which is a bioflavonoid found in chamomile that supports relaxation. Also reishi, which is a mushroom superfood. Really been like interested in the whole like mushroom era we're in right now, and that supports the body's sleep cycle and managing stress. It has magnesium, which is a mineral that aids the body's ability to fall asleep by relaxing the muscles, regulating the nervous system. Don't I sound like Bill Nye? It also has L-theanine, which is an amino acid that also promotes relaxation and improves sleep quality, and melatonin, which is an ingredient that I have known also promotes restful sleep. Some of the benefits that I have noticed is, like I said, easier for me to fall asleep, stay asleep, which is important, waking up refreshed, I'm not groggy, it tastes delicious, there's no sugar, only 15 calories, it's gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, non-GMO, and keto-friendly. I am a subscriber to make sure that I always have stock now, and if you are into CBD and you are in the US, I would jump on that if I were you. I can't order just because of restrictions of shipping to Canada, but I'm telling you, like, if my sleep is this good, without the CBD, I cannot even imagine having that ingredient just to like kick it up a notch. They also have 6 delicious flavors that you can choose from. There is cinnamon cocoa, sea salt caramel, chocolate, peanut butter, white chocolate peppermint, chocolate raspberry, and now mint chip. You can also subscribe and save 20% plus get a additional 15% off and a free frother with my code Sherrilyn when you click my link in the description below. That's up to 35% off the original price. You can also pause, skip, or cancel at any time, so there is no risk to you. I'm telling you right now, though, you just like are not going to want to go to bed without it. Once again, if you subscribe, you can save 20% plus get an additional 15% off when you use my code Sherrilyn, and you get a free frother. I don't know why, I think the frother is so adorable. It just kicks it up a notch. It makes me feel like a barista. I wish I could just like share the taste with you through the screen, but just take my word for it, all right? Thank you so much, Beam, for sponsoring today's video and for continuing to assist in all of these solid, delightful, appreciated sleeps we've been having. All right, today's case is one that I had never heard of, and it's one that had my blood boiling. Like the lengths people go to because of jealousy instead of just moving the F on is beyond me. And then you come to reality thinking about the lives that are affected because of those emotions and irrational actions. It's so heartbreaking to realize like this people's lives are still affected by your selfishness to this day. Today we are talking about Kelly Underwood, who was a woman who survived heartbreak, divorce, depression, a life-threatening tumor. But a number of people played part in one of the most gruesome acts of betrayal and ultimately led to something she couldn't survive. Kelly was born and raised in Mesquite, Texas, just east of Dallas. In school, she was known as a very positive person. She's somebody who dressed well, took pride in her appearance, played tennis. Her friends at school said she looked like your typical 80s girl. She didn't have any issues getting dates, which could cause jealousy from other girls, cattiness, but Kelly wasn't a pushover. So as much as people tried to intimidate her for, just taking pride in her appearance and being fun-loving and somebody who would just light up the room with a smile, she would give some pushback and be like, okay, like I didn't come for you, but if you're going to come to me, I'm going to show you what's up. After graduation, she found herself in a couple situations where she was quite unlucky in love. She married pretty young, but that first marriage didn't last. She married a second time, and unfortunately that also ended in divorce. So she was kind of feeling defeated, struggling to raise 3 children as a single parent, and then also balancing work. On top of that, her health took a turn, and in 2001, she was diagnosed with a life-threatening brain tumor. After it was removed, she suffered from partial paralysis, and I think the whole ordeal and just everything accumulating up until that point caused her to go through a battle of depression. One of Kelly's best friends from high school, one of her ride or dies that always had her back when everybody else was like really jealous and catty, her name was Tiffany. She and Kelly had remained close throughout the years, but I think primarily through just exchanging letters, because after graduation, Kelly had moved to Princeton, which is like a suburb of Dallas, which was about 50 miles away from where Kelly was. Tiffany suggested, with everything going on out there, why don't you come out here? And on paper, the community kind of sounded ideal. It's like the tree-lined streets, just like this hometown feel. Everybody knows everybody. We've had quite a few of these cases lately, and I think some common factor in that is like it can be really nice to have that sense of community, but could also be like very problematic. Everybody in your business, the rumor mill turning, and it just can like aggravate drama quite quickly. But Kelly saw the positivity in it. Her 2 older children had already grown and left the house. So it was just Kelly and her 15-year-old daughter, Kaden, and they decided to take up the opportunity to have like a little bit of a fresh start. So the 2 of them set out to Princeton, and they moved in with Tiffany and her husband, Ronnie Wellborn, while they just kind of got on their feet. Tiffany also knew what it was like to go through a divorce. This was her second marriage, and Ronnie and her were raising her child from her first marriage. And Kelly's daughter said that they really did go like the extra mile to make sure that both of them were comfortable, happy, made sure like they felt like this was, even though it was a temporary situation, like this was your home for the meantime. They had kind of like a little family dynamic. They would have dinners together, and Kelly was feeling really grateful for them and hopeful for her new future in Princeton. First thing she set her sights on was getting a job, and Ronnie actually hooked her up with a job at his very successful metal fabrication business called Express Fabrication. Initially, she, I think, was helping out as a welder, and then took a position in the front office doing more of like the administrative work. And over time, she and Ronnie, like they became close. They became friends. They're working together. They're driving to and from work together, living together. But as time goes on, the situation starts to make Tiffany a little bit uncomfortable, and jealousy takes over, and she becomes convinced that the 2 of them are having an affair. She confronts Kelly and Ronnie, and they deny anything happening, but she's so set on the idea, and tensions just got so high one day that Tiffany just started packing up her things, and Kelly was like, "What are you doing?" Like trying to stop her, saying, you know, he loves you, nothing's going on, he's your husband, look at this beautiful home you guys are in this life that you are creating together. And Tiffany was basically like, well, if you're, you know, like so worried about what he does with me and my relationship, like, why don't you just take my place? Like, if you think it sounds so good. Which Kelly's friends say devastated her, because she was so appreciative of what Tiffany had done for her, opening up her home to her and her daughter. She would have never gone behind her back. I think part of the reason why Tiffany was so triggered is because Ronnie had been unfaithful in the past. So there was like a little bit of a pattern there that they had worked through. But just seeing Kelly and Ronnie working together, you know, building a friendship, it kind of added like salt to the wound that wasn't quite healed. And it was just her breaking point. So Tiffany moved out, but Kelly and her daughter, with nowhere to live yet, they stayed living in the house, and Kelly stayed working at Express Fabrication. In those early days, Ronnie is still trying to fight and save his marriage with Tiffany, but she was just over it. It sounds like once she had already put herself out there, given him a chance, I don't think that was the first act of infidelity he had. The first time that she found out, this was just like the straw that broke the camel's back. So she filed for divorce. While they're going through all of the divorce actions, Kelly is being bombarded with sticky notes on her vehicle. Sometimes they're actually in her car. So she'd wake up and there'd be a sticky note on her door, and it said things like home wrecker, or she'd open up her door and it would actually be on her seat. So she's knowing that somebody was in her vehicle to leave this. It's a very eerie and invasive feeling, and it just expedited her and her daughter's Caden's decision to move into an apartment building. So she moves out of the home with Ronnie, but keep in mind she's still working for Ronnie. Even though nothing was going on between the 2 of them prior to the breakdown of the marriage between Ronnie and Tiffany, the divorce kind of made them think like, okay, is there something there? Almost like people are continually accusing them of doing something. So it makes you think about it, like, are they seeing something that we are not seeing? Are they just being malicious? Or it's just so now embedded in our brains that it's almost like, you fought so long, it's like, oh, okay, well, like maybe we will test the waters. I also got the impression that besides the fact that there could have just been like a connection between them, whether that was friends and they wanted to explore something more, Kelly also had like a very deep appreciation for Ronnie. He helped her significantly, not just getting her a job, but helping her set up her apartment. He also promoted her to basically be taking care of all of the runnings of his business, not just doing administrative work and answering phones and stuff, but like she was in control of the business, all of the accounts. So he trusted her with a lot of responsibility, and I think she appreciated like his faith in her. I don't think that it was a decision that she came to lightly, deciding to pursue things. It was something she actually spoke with her daughter and her good friends back home about, and went like back and forth with, I don't want anyone to have, one up on me saying like, oh, we were right the whole time, when that wasn't the case. But on the other sense, like I am being accused of it, so I might as well at this point. And one of Kelly's good friends said like, well, why not? If you're feeling that there potentially could be something there, like he's fully divorced now. So they started to see each other. Just as quick as things start between the two of them, though, Kelly finds out that Ronnie is two-timing on her. She finds out that right after she and her daughter had moved to their own apartment, he moved in a woman in her mid-20s named Katie Robinson. I think she kind of came out of nowhere for Kelly. It wasn't somebody that they worked with or anything like that. The two of them met because of their love of racing. I think they would like attend some of the same racing events on the weekends, and that's how they became involved. So Kelly is now the one confronting Ronnie, and he denies anything happening, like he did when Tiffany confronted him like a number of times. And given his track record, Kelly's just like not buying it. And she's very right in feeling this way, because this wasn't somebody that he just moved in to also try to help. This gal that's like 18 years younger than them has been having, I guess, like an affair with him as well. So you've now got this like octagon or square. It's bigger than a triangle. I don't really know what kind of shape we could explain it as right now. But this goes on for 3 years. Kelly's life is progressing positively, though. In the spring of 2017, she's finally able to move into a new home in Princeton. By this point, all 3 children had left the nest, so this was the first time for her to just kind of enjoy the house to herself and just have a little bit of me time. Unfortunately, she only got a few months to enjoy this really exciting next chapter in her life. On the evening of September 20th, 2017, Kelly's daughter Kaden went to Kelly's house after she hadn't heard from her mom. It had been several days and she was starting to worry. It was very out of Kelly's nature to not reply. She said even if they were in some sort of like little disagreement, her mother always answered or called back pretty quick. She said as soon as she pulled up to the house, she just got this pit in her stomach, and she walked up to the door, knocked, and there was no answer. So she went inside and started calling out for her mother. As she's walking through the house, she sees like messes left behind. Specifically in the kitchen, there's like dishes and pans that are left out. And this is just not in Kelly's nature at all. She said that she's like a little bit OCD, so she liked things neat and tidy, and she would just never leave her home in that condition. She keeps walking through the house, calling for her mother, and she makes her way upstairs and into one of the bedrooms. She finds her mother on the floor, covered in blood, cold to the touch. She says she just remembers kneeling down, and initially she was just going to check her pulse, and her hand had grazed Kelly's leg, and she said it was just ice, and it scared her. She ran out of the house and called 911. When investigators arrived, the scene was obviously concerning based off what they're hearing from Kaden, with her mom being quite organized. And in several of the rooms, like things are toppled over. You can see that a struggle had gone down. Now, Princeton hadn't seen a murder in decades, so the Princeton Police Department had decided to enlist the Texas Rangers with the investigation, which I really respected because I think a lot of the cases lately we've seen the opposite happen, or even if other departments or investigators are being asked to come in, things are still quite separated, not a lot of like encouragement to share details, which doesn't make sense to me. It's like we are here to solve a case. This is not about egos, but it sounded like the right thing was done very quickly in this situation. Just looking at Kelly's body, it was clear there were a number of injuries, but when the autopsy came back, it showed that she had died not only from multiple gunshot wounds, but stab wounds as well. And they were in different areas. So it seemed like the knife wounds were kind of all condensed to like the upper head and neck area where the gunshot wounds were kind of spread out. And it led investigators to believe that like it's not common for two types of weapons to be used on a victim, especially by one person. So they believed that there were two perpetrators who had done this to Kelly. Some of the evidence that was collected was 5 .22 caliber shell casings, silverware from the kitchen, and plates. And there were several place settings out, which led investigators just immediately to believe that Kelly had guests over. So whoever did this to her, there's a possibility that these were people that she trusted, invited to her home, and was feeding a meal to. Because she lived alone, there was also a camera monitor that her family and friends knew about that was missing, and cigarette butts in the backyard that were collected. DNA samples were also taken from her fingernails to see if they could pull anything from there. And based on the state of her body, investigators believe that her murder had occurred sometime between September 16th, which was the Friday night, or September 17th in the early hours, which would have been the Based on the state of her body, investigators believe that her murder occurred sometime between the night of September 16th and the very early morning hours of September 17th. So she had unfortunately been in her home for a couple days before her daughter found her. The first person investigators speak to is her daughter, Kaden. She's the first on the scene. She's also the closest to the victim, Kelly, being her daughter. They basically say, take us from the beginning. We want to know everything going on in her life, everybody in her life. Do you think that there's anybody that had issues with her? One of the first people that Kaden tells detectives about is Ronnie Welburn, and just kind of like the whole history of everything that had been going down the last couple of years. She says, yes, her mother had met Ronnie because of her coming to stay with her best friend who was married to Ronnie at the time. But the issues weren't actually with Tiffany. They were with this girl named Katie Robinson. So next they bring Ronnie in. He also admits that yes, like Kelly and him met because of his wife Tiffany, but they didn't start a relationship until after Tiffany had left, and that they had been together for the last couple of years. He says in their relationship, everything is fine, but there had been tension lately. And even though he loves Kelly, he takes care of her, he admits to having a girlfriend that lives with him. They've been together for about 3 years, and they just had a 3-month-old daughter together. The last time Ronnie says that he saw Kelly, he said he dropped off some paperwork pertaining to the business at her house. It was Friday afternoon, so this is like, could be the day or 1 to 2 days before the murder, and he was only there for about 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes max, and he left around 1 p.m. He says mainly the issue with him is just kind of like keeping both of these women at bay and just like suppressing their suspicions of one another, which is like absolutely outrageous. It's just like fess up, especially because it sounds like there was a lot of knowledge that Kelly had that she would confront him with, and then he would like deny. According to Kelly's friends, he had done, I guess, like a decent job at making her feel like, okay, she's I'm the only one for him. Like, I'm just overthinking everything. Maybe it's just because of the accusations that were thrown towards me, and I'm just kind of projecting that. Until New Year's 2016, Kelly was out with some friends, and they ran into mutual friends of theirs who were also mutual friends with Ronnie, and they dropped this bomb that Katie's pregnant with Ronnie's baby. And as much as she just convinced herself that nothing was going on, she was gutted. She just wasn't prepared. There was something in the back of her mind that knew something was going on, but it really took like the wind out of her. So she excuses herself to the washroom at this moment, and she calls her daughter, just in absolute shock. And she says, like, against my better judgment, I did believe him. I believed that he was just helping her out and that they were just friends. We had been in a similar situation ourselves, like, how could I let myself do that? And then it turns to anger. She's like, like, how do you lie about a baby coming into this world? Like, what were you going to do when this child shows up? So she made a decision at that point. She was going to end things romantically with him, but she was still going to continue to work for him. She had a good position with him. It was because of this position that she was so set up in Princeton, and she didn't really have another option at that moment to go to. So the next person detectives want to talk to is Katie, and she comes in and she's very, I don't know, like, her interview is very nonchalant, kind of just like aloof. And she's saying that she actually has no knowledge of an affair with Kelly, and that she's the only woman in Ronnie's life. You can do only so much with the information that you're provided from people that you're interviewing. And when the detectives looked into Ronnie and Katie's alibis for that weekend, they checked out. So they were released following their interviews. And so they looked at Tiffany, even though it had been a couple years. There can be this like resentment that just like sits there and spews. And then if you have knowledge of a relationship transpiring after, whether it was legitimately after the relationship had ended or not, there's always going to be that thought in your mind that like this was going on when I had suspicions of it. They interviewed Tiffany, and through the interview there was just like nothing that gave weight to it, and for kind of those reasons that I just mentioned, like it had been over 3 years. She had moved on. She didn't really care one way or another. Of course, she probably had ill feelings towards both of them, but not enough to actually harm somebody. And even Kaden, Kelly's daughter, was like, absolutely not. Tiffany had her issues with Ronnie that obviously spilled into her relationship with her mother, but she was always a person that was like very kind and there for her, and she absolutely could not see her being involved in any capacity. While these interviews are going on, there's also investigation going on, like on the grounds, like in the trenches with the neighbors. And one of the neighbors said that on September 16th, he saw Kelly with 2 men in a truck. The truck had Illinois license plates, and they appeared to be doing some work on her house that weekend. Kelly's sister, when she spoke to investigators, said that she was aware of some work that was going to be done at her house. There was a above ground pool that she was wanting to put in, and then one of her security cameras was having a little bit of issues, so she was going to have that camera replaced. Her sister didn't know who the person doing the work was, but they asked Ronnie, and Ronnie says, yes, actually, it's one of my former employees. He's a man named Robert Vale, and sometimes Kelly gets him to do some work for her. He had worked at Express Fabrication, and he was a staple employee. There was no issues or brushes with the law, but sometimes like he just needed to try to make some extra pocket change. I mean, like, who doesn't these days? So Kelly would look for things that she needed help with and help him out by him helping her out. So then he's brought in for an interview, and he says yes, he had been at Kelly's a number of times. He had done quite a bit of work there. He was installing this above ground pool, and he says he's open to providing a DNA sample for them. So they take a swab, and then they ask him if he is okay to give consent for them to look through his phone. And he kind of changes his attitude at this point. He I don't think he outright said no, but he started kind of like tampering with it and delaying things. And it was just the way that things were going down. Immediately, the phone was seized. Now, I'm really interested in knowing how that whole phone seizure went down. I tried to look for it because I don't know why, but things fascinate me like that because I know that usually there's a lot of rules and regulations and protocol that you have to follow. But this phone was seized. However, it takes time to like get those like proper things in check and to pull the information. So while that's being done, Kelly's loved ones are the ones that are theorizing. They're checking in on each other. They're on the ground, like looking and talking to potential witnesses. Kaden, Kelly's daughter, said Ronnie particularly made an effort to reach out to her, wondering what, how she was doing, what he could do to help and be there for her. And so did Katie, who is not somebody that Kaden had really spoken to. She knew of her, but she reached out to her on Facebook saying, if you need anything, I'm here for you. I lost my mother, so I know what the feeling is like. And for Kaden, all she wanted to do at that moment was just find answers. It wasn't even really about processing what had happened and taking all of these, like kind messages and prayers and what can I do to help. Like it was like, I need help finding answers. So she started also going and speaking to neighbors. She ends up going to the neighbor who lives directly across the street from Kelly and asks if he has any information. And he says that, yes, he saw an individual that he actually knew with Robert Vale, who had already admitted to being at Kelly's house doing some work. But this was the second person. So other witnesses had said they saw two people. He said he saw this second person as well, who he was familiar with, not really familiar with because he only knew him as the name D. So it's Kaden who reaches out to her connections and people she knows who knows people in the area, wondering like, do you know anybody named D? Her friend says, I think I know who it is. It sounds like it could be this guy named Delvin Powell, who also goes by the name D. So Kaden pulls up this photo of Delvin on Facebook, brings it to the neighbor and says, is this him? And he says, yeah. So it's Kaden who brings this to the investigators, which is another thing that I just find so, it's such a weird emotion. It's very fascinating. I admire it, like when you're able to kind of take matters into your own hands and understand that behind the scenes things work a little bit slower than they can if you can go out there. But then in the same sense, you're like, why are you having to do this? Like your loved one should be here. You shouldn't be having to go, search for witnesses and get information. Anyways, Kaden is able to kind of expedite things, brings this information to the investigators, and when they run his name, they realize that he has a warrant for his arrest for a outgoing charge for choking his girlfriend. So the Texas Rangers and the Princeton police put out a bolo for him, and he's found in a hotel in Allen that's not too far from Princeton. He's brought in. Meanwhile, his hotel room is searched, his car searched that's in the parking lot. And in his car were 22 caliber bullets, the same that was found at the scene of Kelly's murder. And he also happened to have some knives in his hotel room. This obviously isn't enough to help with anything in Kelly's case at that moment, but it's enough to bring him in based on his outstanding warrant for the domestic violence charge. So investigators take what they can get, but he's not talking about anything. The uneasiness of the whole situation too is that from the initial moments of this investigation, it was believed that there were two perpetrators. So with only one potential suspect being arrested, that still doesn't even come close to finding out who the other person was, if there was another person. And 2 weeks has gone by, and Kelly's family is feeling, no more comforted by any means, especially when they're at her house. They're cleaning out her home for her property estate, and they see on the sidewalk this graffiti that's written in chalk that says, "Whore lives here." Now, the disturbing part is that it had rained since her death. If you're like a a chalk mom like me, it's usually like just free reign with the chalk, whatever's going to make them happy, because either rain or the hose is going to take care of it pretty effortlessly. But her family said like this was fresh and clear as day after the rain, after Kelly had already passed. So somebody made this effort to say that, put that on her property after her death. The frustrating thing was there was no surveillance in that area from the surrounding neighbors that showed who did this. And even more frustrating on top of that is that there were cameras in Kelly's yard. She even spoke about having one of them replaced because it wasn't working well. That was supposed to be done that weekend. But when her family went to her home, all of those cameras were missing. Unfortunately, there's no leads that can come of this chalk message. But by the time this was all coming to light, those cell phone records had come through, and in them there was a bombshell, if you will. I guess we'll start with Kelly's. Through her phone records, remember during Katie's interview, she said that she, was kind of shocked, aloof, like didn't have any knowledge of any affair that Ronnie was having with her. However, 3 months prior to Kelly's death, she reaches out to Kelly and says, I know, we're not really the closest. We haven't been good friends, but I'm having Ronnie's baby any day now, and I want you to know that. And Kelly replies to her, and she's like, I don't even know why you felt the need to do this. Nothing's going on. I've made it very clear, like I am not at all involved with him that way. This is something that Kelly's loved ones also confirmed. They said after Kelly had proof, that this baby was coming, this is concrete proof that there was an affair in this relationship that she suspected all of these years, that was all she needed. She was officially done with Ronnie. That being said, though, the situation is murky because she's still working for him, running his entire business. And after the baby's born, it's quite an aggressive turn that Katie takes in her suspicions of something going on and her jealousy towards Kelly. It's a huge point of contention between her and Ronnie, and he's continually denying it, very similarly to the situation that was going on with Tiffany in that marriage. And Katie had reason to feel that way. Ronnie was definitely trying to pursue things with Kelly and rekindle things with her. He would tell her things like he loved her. She'd say, this is not what I want. This is not a relationship for me, especially now with a child coming into the mix. Like, I'm good working for you, for having that relationship. I'm bettering my life. You do you. But Kelly's loved one said like it very much was Ronnie who wouldn't let it go. Like, he wouldn't accept no for an answer, wanted his cake and eat it too. And as much as Kelly knew she deserved better than this situation, there were really huge complications here. And it's a very toxic situation. And I think it's a toxic situation that Kelly probably wouldn't have even really realized was. Of course, she knows it's not an ideal situation, but to actually understand like the overpowering factor of control of that relationship, oftentimes it's not always just one or the other, but it's either just like this personal control or like a subtle financial control. And in this situation, it kind of acted as both. They had this unhealthy personal relationship for years, arguing about affairs, and then just kind of the gaslighting and all of that. And then the financial control, like she worked for him, ran his business. For him to say, no, things aren't over, like I still care for you, it leaves her in a really tight situation. And investigators learned through phone records that this working relationship, from what Ronnie was telling Katie, is just not okay with her anymore. She has absolutely had it. And even though she told the investigators that she didn't know that anything was wrong, and obviously they saw that there was a little bit of a correspondence between her and Kelly, her phone records and text messages between Ronnie definitely showed that she was very aware and very angry about Kelly being in the picture. So on July 18th, Katie sends a message to Kelly saying, I'm getting ready to leave Ronnie now, so I hope y'all are both happy. even with Kelly saying nothing's going on, her telling Ronnie nothing's going on, like she's continually being put in this toxic situation between like Ronnie and Katie, and he just like doesn't lay off. August 6, 2017, he sends a text message to Kelly saying, "Good morning, I love you." Kelly replies, "F you, don't call me, don't text me." Again, he's relentless. One of the last texts that he sends her is him saying, "I love you. You're my next wife, Mrs. Kelly Wellborn." Oh, can I please be Ronnie? Like, just no is no. What is with the egos? At this point, all they're really seeing is that Katie's lied. She's obviously very well aware of Kelly. And then one of her good friends comes forward who wished to be anonymous, and she speaks with investigators and says that she suspects potentially some involvement with Ronnie and Katie into what happened with Kelly, because Katie had told her that there were plans that were being conjured up where they were going to try to get Kelly arrested to get her out of the picture. They were going to plant some drugs in her car, call in a tip, and then she'd be arrested and jailed. The last she heard of it, the plan didn't pan out, so that was pretty much it. So investigators bring Katie back in, and they're like, what I've heard about these plans, what was going on. Also, we know that you're very well aware of Kelly and Ronnie and have a huge issue with Kelly based on your text messages. So she's kind of backed into a wall, and she starts to throw Ronnie under the bus. She said Ronnie told her that he needed to get rid of Kelly because she was volatile and unpredictable, and because she knew everything about the business, she could destroy it if she wanted to. She could just like burn the whole thing to the ground. So they're like, okay, what do you mean get rid of? Does it mean firing? Does it mean putting her up in another home somewhere very far away from you, getting her another job? Like, what does this mean? And she says she knew that Ronnie hired Delvin Powell and Robert Veal, kill Kelly, get rid of her, because he had no other choice. That's what she meant. She said she didn't know all the details. She never asked. All she knew was that the two of the men were over there that weekend and that Ronnie had coordinated it all. So Ronnie's brought in and confronted, and he's really caught off guard with what detectives have, and saying that it has all come from Katie, and he just folds instantly. He admits to planning the murder of Kelly Underwood and paying Robert Veal $8,000 to kill Kelly, and he even provided the gun to Robert. In the same breath, he is insistent that it is him and only him that is responsible for all of this planning and scheming, and that Katie, even though she threw him under the bus, had nothing to do with it. And get this, when he's asked why kill this woman, he said that he was tired of the drama between the two women in his life. Poor you, f***ing Ronnie. Oh, I told you at the beginning, blood boiling. Now, at this point, when they were going through those text messages and stuff, they had Kelly's. Kelly's was the one that was providing the information, and that's how they knew that Katie was responding or was messaging Kelly. But after Katie's admission of having some knowledge of what was going to happen, and Ronnie's, both of their phones are confiscated. And through Katie and Ronnie's text messages, things got extremely damaging for Katie Robinson. For a month, from August 18th to September 18th, Katie was bombarding Ronnie with messages about Kelly, giving him ultimatums and saying things like, if you do not get rid of her, I'm leaving. I'm talking like continually messaging him things like, why isn't she gone? Why is she still here? Why is she still in our lives? When is she going to be gone? And he's just trying to say things like, yes, I'm going to sort it out. I'm going to fix the problem. And then she replies with, you don't give an F about me or us. I'm leaving, and you two can be effing happy together, which is probably what you should have done, Katie. No man is worth this drama. Now, even though Kelly is also trying to get out of this, again, she's in a much trickier situation because she is working for him, and this is how she's providing and set herself up in this new city. It's much easier said than done to just leave a situation like that. She's doing her best, though, to distance herself personally, like romantically, with the guy. And he's relentless. And he's also doing the same with Katie. He's telling her, like, I only care about you. Please don't leave me. And then she ultimately says, you have 1 month. You have until September 18th. If it is not done by then, I'm gone. They find out that Katie was also messaging Delvin Powell, somebody who she would have no business knowing. There was no mutual connections whatsoever. And through those text messages, she's demanding for Robert Veal to call her, asking, what the status is, what's going on. And what was really disturbing between the messages involving Delvin and Robert is that they essentially had laid out a plan on text message, which kind of gave you an idea of what happened to Kelly. Robert tells Delvin, I've got the plan. We're going to pull up. We're going to crank the radio up. I'm going to go to work. And then we leave like nothing happened. So they arranged to hang out with Kelly. This wasn't hard because Kelly had a friendly relationship with Robert, having him do work around her house. Through Robert, she trusted him, got to know Delvin, invited them into her home, cooks them a meal. While they're hanging out, Robert disables the camera system, turns up the radio to hide any sounds that come from Kelly's house as they attack her, and they turn on Kelly. And based on where she was found, it seems like she most likely ran for her life. She ran upstairs into one of her craft rooms, and investigators aren't sure if like maybe her instinct was just to go in there and see if she could find like scissors or something to defend herself. They believe both Robert and Delvin followed her up there. Robert most likely the one with the gun and Delvin with the knife, and they murdered her absolutely defenseless. At 2 a.m. on September 17th, Robert sent a message to Ronnie, and all it said was, it's done. Ultimately, it was the DNA samples that were taken from Robert and Delvin and then matched to the materials found at the crime scene, which was the solid piece, the nail in the coffin, if you will, for the two of them. And on November 16th, 2017, Ronnie Wellborn, Katie Robinson, Robert Veal, and Delvin Powell were arrested and charged with capital murder. Robert and Delvin were found guilty of capital murder, and they were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. After their sentencing, Ronnie's attorneys reached out to the prosecutor and said that they wanted to plead guilty to murder to avoid going to trial. So in October 2020, he was sentenced to life in prison. However, there was not a no possibility of parole stipulation on there. He is eligible for parole in 2047 when he will be 75 years old. This one, I mean, it all infuriates me, like the fact that this many people were involved and no one thought to say anything. But this sentence just, ugh. Katie Robinson also decided to plead guilty to murder and not go to trial. And on November 3rd, 2020, she received 30 years in prison. So she's eligible for parole in 2032 when she's only 43 years old. Can we remember when Katie reached out to Kaden telling her that she knew how it felt to lose a mom because she had also lost a mom? And then we find out that she had a hand in this. And then Kaden finds out that Katie actually didn't lose a mother. Like, that is effing diabolical. And I am so sick of these like Black Widow puppet masters who just manipulate men to do their dirty work, and then they get the least amount of time. Like, every single damn one of you should have got life without the possibility of parole. And I stand by that. 100%. If it was not for Katie Robinson, Kelly Underwood would still be alive, period. Can we make that a thing? You guys, like, can we just be a little bit more aggressive in making sure that these type of women who manipulate like this and have these jealous insecurities, granted, I mean, I'm not going to say that she wasn't wrong to have any suspicion of anything going on, But to murder someone, like, no, there is no one in your life that is worth keeping around and taking another life for. Absolutely freaking nobody. All right, I'm super heated. I'm going to leave you with that today, okay? That is it for me today. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. If you missed last week's case, you can find it right here. You can also find more videos on my true crime playlist. And the answer to today's riddle, because I did not forget it this week. Quick refresher. A is the brother of B. B is the brother of C. C is the father of D. So how is D related to A? And the answer is A is D's uncle. And I got that one, you guys. I know a lot of you did too. Okay, all right. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.